Now, this is a reading from the Gospel of Matthew, chapter 15, verses 21 to 28. Jesus went away to the district of Tyre and Sidon. Just then, a Canaanite woman from that region came out and started shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." But he did not answer her at all. And his disciples came and urged him, saying, "Send her away, for she keeps shouting after us." He answered, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she came and knelt before him, saying, "Lord, help me." He answered, "It is not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs." She said, "Yes, Lord, yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from their master's table." Then Jesus answered her, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." And her daughter was healed instantly.
I kind of like today's gospel reading from Matthew. I like it because it makes me work hard. Jesus doesn't make it very easy for me to admire him in this reading today. In fact, it could actually be quite easy to slap some quick labels on to describe what's going on in this encounter with the Canaanite woman, just like a newspaper with a deadline to meet might do. Is Jesus being racist? Is he prejudiced? Has he, in fact, having just warned the crowd that what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart, just defiled himself and everyone around him by what came out of his mouth? That would have been an interesting garden path for Matthew to lead us down. At the induction service for Reverend Ken Sumner, he's the head of the Aboriginal and Torres Island Christian Congress, the Indigenous arm of the Uniting Church. Ken chose this story to be read and preached on at his service. Quite an interesting choice to make. For him, for Ken, it is a story of hope and challenge. And as an Aboriginal man, he makes a strong identification with the Canaanite woman, the one who's been waiting for scraps to just fall off the table, and who challenges Jesus to do something about it. In the reading from Matthew, it's interesting to hear the first thing that comes out of the disciples' mouths after Jesus said this. "Do you know that the Pharisees took offence at what you said?" Whisper, whisper. Outrage, shock tones, delight in spreading a bad word. We love that, don't we? "Oh, did you hear what he said?" Guess what? The Pharisees are going to be pretty mad at you, or you're going to get in trouble for this one, Jesus. When I sat with this part of the story, it highlighted again why gossip can be such a real problem. It may be that the content of the gossip, it's an interesting mix of words, the gossip itself can be damaging. But in this passage, it also prevents the disciples from listening to what's really going on. They get distracted about what Jesus said and focus on how the Pharisees, the rule keepers, will react. And then they take that reaction back to Jesus to see how he will react in turn. An important part of what they can learn starts getting lost in the possibility of quite an entertaining spectacle, not unlike the papers of today. As a result, Jesus has to explain it to them again later because they haven't spent time considering what he means. They've just been stirring up a show. Jesus pulls them up before they can go too far down the path. And without some impatience, he says something like, "Come on, guys, let's focus here. They're blind fools. Don't follow them anywhere." And he spells it out because they need to understand that if they're going to challenge the power and the purity practices of the Pharisees and face up to their anger, they need to know why they are doing it and what's at stake. So Matthew tells us that after what had happened earlier on, where they're getting caught up in the Pharisees and all of their stuff, they go off to Tyre and Sidon, Gentile territory. Now, you and I will hear that like, oh, well, they're just going down the Barossa Valley for the afternoon. We don't think anything of it. But to the hearers of the day, going down to Tyre and Sidon is, well, it would be like someone from, I guess, central Adelaide, going out to live amongst the people in the urban poor area of Woodville Gardens. Or maybe some of us going and actually living out in the YP lands and finding out what life's like there. It's an area where you automatically begin to feel on edge. The disciples start to feel that this confrontation between what's clean and unclean is going to be in their faces. To them, Gentile territory was to be avoided at all costs. And it makes me think about what are the things that make you and I curl up in disgust, the things that we would least want to have shoved into our face, something that would make us want to have a long hot shower afterwards to scrub it all away. Being clean or dirty is not just about the germs we know about today. Sometimes people and situations can bring that reaction up in us, and we have all sorts of cleansing rituals, if you like, to rid ourselves of the contamination. I was trying to think of an example when I came up with a situation where I might be hanging out with a person who's making racist or derogatory comments. And then someone comes by whose good opinion I actually value. And then I feel guilty or dirty by association with this person saying things that I really don't agree with. Perhaps there might be this temptation to distance myself from this person or to put them down as a way of making myself feel better. So with those thoughts and in those situations in mind, we come back to our story. This Gentile woman, read unclean, don't go near, avoid at all costs. This Gentile woman comes up to Jesus. She is not supposed to approach a Jewish male in a public place. All sorts of rules have been broken already. Strike 1, 2, and 3, she should be out by now. This encounter should have gone no further. But she names him. She knows who he is, the Son of David. And therefore, we can assume she knows the rules. She knows who she can talk to and who she can't. But she chooses to break them. She chooses to break the rules. And I think she's desperate. And sometimes in our own desperation, we take actions that sometimes we wouldn't have been able to. And her desperation compels her to take action for the sake of her daughter. Despite the rules, she will not give up until she has an answer. Now, to my ears, Jesus actually not answering her in the first part of the reading comes across as quite rude. She's asked a question and he doesn't answer her. And recall too that the disciples were urging Jesus to send her away, this annoying woman. Perhaps not answering was less insulting than sending her away. So has Jesus decided not to take offence here, as he was socially and legally justified to? And that made me think, do we have experiences where we get to choose whether we take offence or not? Or does it just happen? Does it just happen sometimes that we are offended for no rational reason? And I wonder what was going over in Jesus' mind when this woman called out to him. I wonder what he chose not to say. I wonder whether what happened next came about because he needed to get past that initial reaction and he needed to listen to what God was saying. Perhaps by being silent was him actually thinking about, how do I really respond in this situation? His disciples are telling him what he should do. Get rid of her. Tell her to move on. But he doesn't. What does Jesus do? He actually engages her in debate. And I actually think this might be a sign of respect. Now, public debate is not a big thing in our culture, but the trading of arguments in front of a crowd was very common in the time of Jesus. And he certainly throws down the gauntlet at her. I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel. What will she say now? You can see everyone waiting to hear what she's going to say. And so she kneels and names him as Lord and asks again. And Jesus again comes back with a retort, it's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. And that's where I find I start to cringe. She has been incredibly humble and is clearly in need, and Jesus insults her, stereotypes her in a way that firmly places her in that long Jewish tradition of antagonism towards the Canaanites. Their nickname for them were the dogs. And in fact, the word he's using here is basically calling her a female dog. One commentator says that Jesus shows that he's a product of his environment and that we are all influenced by where we grow up. We might say at this stage, he knows no better. And it's the woman who opens his eyes and enables him to change, to embrace the other through this encounter. That might be what's going on. But there's also another way of looking at it. The woman has an opportunity here, doesn't she? By Jesus' responses, she is shown not as someone to be pitied or brushed off, but as someone Jesus invites to stand up and be counted. In this engagement, in this retort back and forth, Jesus is treating her as an equal. He gives her space to take up her power, to find her voice. And she replies very cleverly, "Yes, Lord, but even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall from the master's table." Well, can you hear the crowd? The wolves snap right back at you, Jesus. This woman knows her stuff. So was this a demeaning and humiliating statement from the woman about herself? We might hear it as such. And yet that attitude was probably no news to her. She's only saying what gets said all the time, but she's using it to hold it up and to confront Jesus and the disciples and challenge them. And Jesus makes a total turnaround, commends her for her great faith and heals her daughter. So did Jesus himself make a turnaround at that moment? Was he also leading us, his disciples and onlookers, into a new understanding, in a new way that would allow us to journey together with him, a journey of healing that brought various people together, that broke the rules that separated and called people back as one? Surely Matthew has something here he's trying to draw our attention to. He's trying to get us to be shocked by the interaction. And I think that by Jesus' response, this woman is shown not as someone to be pitied or to be brushed off, but as someone Jesus invites to stand up and be counted. Jesus, I think, is treating her as an equal. Jesus gives her space to take up power and to find her voice. And you know, Jesus does the same thing for all of us as well. So stand up, find your voice, and be who you are in God. Amen.